Have you ever been in a working environment where you are constantly being micromanaged? How does that make you feel? What is the impact that it is having on you being micromanaged? And are there certain times that you believe that people may need micromanaging? And if so, to what extent? And should we be using the terminology micromanaging? Well, micromanaging comes in many forms, and a number of recent events has recently triggered me to speak about and share the impact of micromanaging. Whether this is employees being micromanaged or event organisers or even trainers, this can be demoralising and very, very frustrating. I'm Zinat Noorani and I work as a mindset and wellbeing coach. And in this video, I'm going to be speaking about the signs of a micromanager and some of the ways you can begin to deal with it in a much more healthier manner so that you feel better about yourself. Micromanagers are overly involved supervisors who observe or instruct employees to an excessive degree. For example, these managers may call frequent meetings, ask you to account for every minute of the working day, or position themselves as the sole point of contact. Now, recognizing the signs of a micromanager at work can really help you find ways to deal with it in a much more healthier manner. Micromanagement is one of the most common signs of a bad manager and signs of bad leadership. Micromanagers can negatively affect employee morale, company culture, and impact employee turnover via quiet firing. So here today in this video, I will share with you signs of a micromanager, how to deal with a micromanager, how to give feedback to them, what to say, and of course, some tips for dealing with micromanagers. You're going to find lots and lots of insights to help you with the signs of a micromanager. So first of all, some common behaviors. Number one is they do not delegate. Micromanagement is often a symptom of control issues. Instead of delegating, micromanagers will take on or have hand in all functions. These managers seem to believe that the workplace will fall apart if they do not oversee every single step. Such leaders have a tendency to take over tasks to demonstrate the correct method and may refuse to let employees work alone, no matter how confident they are in their abilities as a team. Even when the managers don't assign duties, employees usually have to obtain approval before moving to the next stage of the processes. These behaviours can lead to delays and uneven workloads and pressures and anxieties around time management. The micromanagers may run around hectically trying to do everything while employees sit around awaiting instructions. Worse still, the micromanager may label this lack of leadership as laziness and use the inactivity to justify the actions. See, I have to do everything because my staff never does anything. No matter how many times employees may offer to help, the manager will never relinquish responsibility, even when team members prove themselves capable and willing. The boss may see that they prefer things to be done a certain way and insist on that happening in terms of overseeing every step. They also over-communicate. Communication is usually a good thing, as we know. However, micromanagers take it to the next extreme level. These managers over-explain instructions, detailing every single step, no matter how many times employees insist, "I've got it." Instead, presenting highlights, these managers relay every piece of information. Such managers ask employees dozens of questions a day, either in person, via the phone, or email. Team members cringe upon getting new notifications, knowing it is likely to be their managers asking them for an update. While not every micromanager may over-communicate to this extent, These leaders reach out more than is necessary. The intention is to be thorough, yet this approach often has the opposite effect as teammates tend to tune the manager out and may miss important information as a result. Next, hovering. Ouch. Micromanagers are always around. Every time you look up, the manager happens to be nearby, perhaps checking the paper in the printer or refiling through the cabinet. Maybe stopping to chat or glancing your way after talking with a colleague. Constantly taking the route that leads past your desk. When you pop into the break room to grab a cup of coffee, voila! There is your manager right behind you or not far behind. On his day or her day off, the micromanager conveniently left an item in the office or stopped by just because they were in the area. Now, these managers try not to make it obvious that they are checking upon you. Yet, all the signs point to snooping. The manager may try to pass these interactions off as a coincidence, but these run-ins happen far too frequently to be natural. So these leaders make their physical presence known and may well believe that the staff will slack if out of sight for too long. The other thing they do is they call for these constant meetings. Not every conversation needs to be a meeting, yet micromanagers seem not to have received this message. Constant meetings are a hallmark of micromanagers. These gatherings go beyond short daily huddles and check-ins. Every day, this leader, manager, supervisor seems to have a pressing topic to discuss. Tellingly, these managers tend to do most of the talking. Attendance is usually mandatory, and the manager will interrogate employees who fail to show up. The more meetings the managers force on the staff to attend, the less time the team have to finish their tasks productively and effectively and efficiently. Thus, the micromanager fears about productivity becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. Asks you to account for every single minute of the day is another sign. In professions that have billable hours, such as the legal field, consulting, and many creative industries, there is an expectation that workers record precisely how they spend each minute. Micromanagers demand this kind of precision no matter what the position is. Now, these bosses constantly question the breakdown of the workday and want to know how you spend your time at all times. Rarely, if ever, do the micromanagers adopt a get it done, I don't care how attitude. Instead, they try to catch you slacking and refuse to have faith that you will make up for the slowdowns or the breaks by hustling later. Now, these micromanagers are likely to misuse employee monitoring software and time tracking software as ways to babysit rather than as aids for structuring work. The other sign is demands for continual hustle. Seeing employees standing around or chit-chatting drives micromanagers crazy. These leaders want to optimize every minute and make sure your team members are staying moving. While it is not a bad instinct to have high standards and expectations and encourage activity, these individuals fail to understand that busyness does not necessarily equal productivity. Now, another fact that these bosses fail to grasp is that idle time also serves a purpose. Work has an ebb and flow, and employees need to rest to re-energize. Plus, stillness can breed clarity and creativity. Socializing also has benefits, as chatting with co-workers deepens bonds and trust and leads to better collaboration and teamwork. These managers seem to think that if employees slow down or stop for a minute, the whole workplace will grind to a halt. Or more likely, the manager may fear losing control of the staff and his employees, yet assigning busy work that serves no greater purpose than to occupy employees is a sure way to erode trust and morale. Wants to sign off on every step is another lookout sign. Reviews and check-ins and balances are not a bad thing. In fact, these measures are essential for quality assurance. However, while good managers check in from time to time, volunteer to give their opinion as needed, and ask to review important or sensitive tasks, micromanagers demand to oversee every piece of work that the employee completes. These bosses often make employees wait for the approval before starting the next stage of the work, which can cause significant delays and frustration. This condition also sends the wrong message that the leader does not trust the employee to do the task correctly when left unmonitored. It is normal for managers to check teammates' work during an onboarding or training process and during more critical projects, of course. However, having to run every single idea or finished product by a manager indefinitely is neither an enjoyable or sustainable work model. The last one is position yourself as sole point of contact. Now, good managers are like telephone operators, connecting parties for direct chats. Micromanagers, on the other hand, are more like telegrams, delivery services, acting forever as the middleman that takes the place of the real-time conversation. These type of managers do not encourage you to reach out to their bosses or other departments and may interfere in these interactions. These individuals will offer to make contact on your behalf and will ferry messages back and forth. This sign can be a tricky one to spot because these behaviours may be a side effect of some of the company hierarchy. Perhaps high-level leaders do want all messages to move through the manager. Maybe the leader is just trying to be helpful by reaching out to other teams on your behalf. Organisational etiquette does not often dictate certain standards in the terms of communication between levels. However, micromanagers interfere even when organisational structure is not so strict or when employees show a willingness to reach out on their own. Now, these bosses may even go as far as to hijacking the conversation or send you away on a task if they spot you having a casual chat with a visiting higher up. So the question here is that you want to know is how to deal with a micromanager boss. Whether or not the boss is aware of their behaviour, the manager may be oblivious to the overbearing habits. Sometimes bringing these observations to the colleague's attention will automatically spark a course of correction. Of course, the manager may be unaware of their meddling and may refuse to acknowledge their behaviour. Now, these leaders are in denial about being micromanagers and may resist the label. Be patient with these bosses and continue to gently present your case over time. It may be better to steer clear of the micromanager label altogether. Instead, focus on actions and solutions. Now, the trickiest group to deal with is the leaders who self-identify as micromanagers, as these individuals are well aware of their conduct and feel justified in their behaviour. Now, these managers may even wear the micromanaging title with pride. Perhaps these individuals feel as if they have to be overly involved to ensure the team meets the goals. Experienced micromanagers may have a history of dealing with employees who took advantage of their freedom. Also, keep in mind that society and the corporate world tends to praise traits like attention to detail and hands-onness. For instance, reporters tell stories about Anne Whittle approving every outfit and place setting for the Met Gala and admire her thoroughness and commitment. Now, micromanagers may have trouble distinguishing what level of involvement is helpful and what is excessive. Convincing these managers to back off requires more than words. Employees will need to show proof that they can handle the extra freedom, perhaps by asking for autonomy in one area at a time and consistently delivering results. It is also helpful to take stock of whether micromanagers are aggressive or just plain annoying. Certain managers, bosses and leaders with anger issues are no fun to confront, and you may want to seek support from other team members or HR before approaching the topic with that person of the management style. So how do we give feedback to micromanagers? Now, the best way to give feedback to a micromanager depends on the individual managers. So try to observe how they respond to criticism and which methods and approaches seem to be most effective. Discussing the supervisor with the manager alongside a group of peers can help the manager understand that it is a widespread problem and not simply a single staff member's complaint. Not to mention, there is strength in numbers, and collective bargaining can be a powerful negotiating tool. Typically, it is better to frame the subject as, "We have some concerns we would like to talk to you about," instead of just springing an intervention, as the latter approach may trigger defensiveness. If managers or the leaders seem more receptive to direct discussion, or if you are part of a small team, then you may choose to raise the issue in a one-to-one meeting. Many performance review processes include opportunities as well for employees to respond, and this may be a good time to bring up your feelings and thoughts and desires for more autonomy, spinning the conversation from the perspective that you as the employee are ready to grow and want more challenges tends to be a safer approach than attacking the leadership style. Whichever approach you decide to choose, you can use the phrases in the next section to start and structure the conversation. So here they are. Statements like, "I've observed," "I've noticed," and "I feel" tend to be helpful in diffusing the tension. Be sure to have data and anecdotes to back up your opinion. This evidence will not only encourage deeper consideration, but will also steer the talk towards resolution rather than focusing on accusation or complaining. If your manager remains unconvinced after the multiple attempts at feedback, or if your manager is hostile, then you may want to escalate the issue to your HR team or your boss's boss. So whoever is on the next hierarchy. Then you're asking what to say to a micromanager. Well, here are a few phrases that can help you handle an overly hands-on boss. Are there aspects of my performance that make you feel I need extra supervision? Why it works is, on the surface, this statement seems like a request for feedback, which shows initiative and ambition and dedication to the job. More sneakily, this phrase forces managers to admit whether their overbearingness is actually inspired by your behavior or informed by past experiences or neuroses. The resulting revelation may make the bosses realize their concern is unfounded, and they may ease up as a result. Even if the manager fails to own it up at the moment, they may adjust their behavior accordingly later on. On the flip side, there is a chance the manager may make up excuses to justify their over-vigilance. The management approach may be a knee-jerk reaction to try to protect themselves. However, the kind of reaction is often emblematic of a deeper problem, be it a toxic environment or a deep delusion. Now, if the boss is ready to exaggerate or outright lie to avoid introspection, and accountability, then you may be fighting an uphill battle. If that approach is the case, then at least you will know what you are up against. You seem like you have a lot on your plate. How can I ease the burden? Is another statement you can use. Why does it work? Well, this sentiment shows a willingness to step up and help, which can contradict claims that you and your teammates are apathetic and your needs to micromanage you to motivate you. The statement also shows consideration and concern for the manager's workload. Empathy and kindness can be very disarming, and it is hard to justify getting mad at somebody offering help. Instead of asking, "How can I help?" you can also suggest specific actions where this offer can open the door for you to wrangle more liberty under the cover of lessening your manager's load. Another statement, "I hate the thought of you waiting on an answer from me when I'm tied up with a teammate or a client. How about we plan to catch up at X time?" So why does this one work? Well, this approach puts an emphasis on how much you value your leader's time, your manager's time, while subtly reminding the manager that you have other duties to attend to. Now, scheduling a meeting helps you take control of when you communicate updates and how often you can consolidate multiple updates into a single meeting. This response is not an outright refusal to cooperate with the boss's request, rather redirection to a more convenient time. Another statement, "I find that I work better when given space to think and experiment. Can you help me make that happen?" So this technique puts the emphasis on your work style instead of your boss's behavior. In fact, with this way, your manager does not need to fess up to micromanagement at all. You can play off your desires for space as a personal preference or work quirk, and your boss can feel as if they are doing you a favor by accommodating your ask. The reasoning behind the request can vary. So for instance, you can also use the logic like, "I get performance anxiety, I am more productive when focused for blocks of time," or "Interruptions often block my creativity. I want to work on being more independent." So a statement like this works because it is hard to deny an employee the chance for development. This tactic puts the focus on ways you want to grow instead of ways that your manager should change. This statement puts the manager's needs to control in direct conflict with your need to be self-sufficient, without outwardly calling your boss out. Plus, the statement shows a willingness for self-improvement. I found this tool that can keep you updated on my progress. Now, if you cannot stop your boss from checking in on you constantly, then at least you can make it so your boss can keep tabs without disturbing you or alerting you. The micromanaging atmosphere may exit for lack of the better system. Tools like Kanban boards and checklists can help to reassure that the boss's progress is being made, or the progress is being made for the boss, and the plan is on track without the need for interruptions and interrogations. So, here is the list of useful project management tools for this job. What not to say to a micromanager. So, here are a few phrases to avoid when confronting bosses about involvement. So beware of these ones. "Leave me alone, stop bothering me." This does not work. This statement may be your inner dialogue when your boss asks you for the umpteenth update of the day. However, outside of your head, on what comes out your mouth, which should not be insubordination. There are much more tactful and effective ways to express this sentiment. Plus, these kinds of dismissive phrases are likely to lead your boss to blame you for not taking feedback or resisting management. Why don't you do it then? Now, why don't you do it then? That absolutely doesn't work. Your boss does not really want to do the work all by themselves. These managers want to assure that their job will be done correctly without their involvement. If the boss continues to take over and micromanage, even after you prove your ability, the boss's behavior may be a symptom of a deeper psychological issue. The manager may feel like they need to make themselves indispensable to prove their worth. Either way, throwing your hands up in the air and enabling the boss's behaviour gives your boss permission to continue that cycle of micromanagement. Another not to say is, obviously, I can't do anything right now. First, the boss's behaviour has less to do with your performance, then their state of mind. Secondly, passive aggression is not the answer here. There are better ways to communicate your frustration than to exaggerate and indulge in self-pity. So another one is, everyone complains about your micromanaging. Off the bat, this statement implies that the teammates talk about the boss behind their back. There is a big difference between gathering peers to professionally air concerns as a group and using your co-workers as a prop to air your grievances. Plus, the boss may double down and insist that gripping and griping does not necessarily mean that he or she has done anything wrong, because many people resent being told what to do. Now, this approach comes off as an attack and can send your micromanaging leader into a fight or flight mode. So we've got, it won't get done any faster with you nagging me. So this statement doesn't work either. Well, why? Even with more polite wording, the underlying meaning of this phrase is on the ruder side. Basically, the sentence is a sassier way to say, leave me alone. Not to mention, one of a manager's jobs is to keep employees on task and on track to meet deadlines. So the manager is not completely off base in prodding. So the next one is, silence may seem like a good response to micromanagers, but more likely than not, it will work your boss into a complete frenzy. Ghosting may solve the issue in the moment, but make the manager double down in the future. You may inspire the boss to take countermeasures to prevent your avoidance. Plus, the micromanager may use your ignoring them as a justification of their own over-attentiveness, despite whether the habit started before the silence. Neglecting issues is rarely the way to solve office conflict, and it is better to confront the problem head on and to take action. So we're going to come to some tips now to deal with micromanaging, some strategies and best practices. So first one, don't take their behaviour personally. The chances are your supervisor, your leader or your manager micromanages everyone, not just you. If you're the only one that is getting overly supervised, then there may be an opportunity for self-reflection. However, the manager may also have chosen to nitpick for factors beyond your control. For instance, maybe you superficially remind them of a former problem employee. Now, in general, try not to interpret your bosses being overly obsessively observant and intense about updates as a sign of defiancy on your end. Micromanagement likely has less to do with your work performance as much as your boss's insecurity and need for control. 2. Do not get frustrated if the first attempt at rehabilitation fails. Micromanagement is often ingrained behavior, and change can take time. Your manager may need time to acknowledge themselves as micromanagers in the first place, and time on top of that to reprogram overbearing habits. Now, if your first attempt to make your boss aware and hold them accountable is unsuccessful, do not give up. Adjusting your work relationship with your boss may be a matter of gradual compromise, and you may need to alter your approach as you go. Thirdly, look for the root issues. There are many causes of micromanagement. There are so many possibilities. For instance, first-time managers often feel anxious about new levels of responsibility and may not yet have the confidence needed to give employees autonomy, or the supervisor may be pressing them to be ultra-involved. Micromanagement may be an issue bigger than your managers, stemming from a misguided company culture. Now, you do not need to play the role of the psychoanalyst. However, emphasizing with your boss can help you understand why they act the way they act and find an effective counter-argument. So emphasizing is really, really important here. 4, rely on supporting evidence. Pleas for change are more effective with evidence, with proof. When making your case more autonomy, have concrete evidence that you are capable of doing the job without extensive oversight. For example, refer to projects that you have done or in other companies effectively. It also helps to have a plan and suggestions for the manager, so solutions and ways forward. For instance, as long as I update the project management tool at the end of every day, you will ask for updates only on a weekly or emergency basis. Or you could say, after I complete task X amount of times, I can do it on my own. So accumulate data and ideas that underline your point. At the very least, this evidence can help you defend yourself in your manager's view. So if your manager tries to pass over management as underperformance in the future. 5, draw boundaries. They're so important. Okay, the most important step is dealing with micromanagers is to establish boundaries. Talking is only so effective. No matter how much you insist you need space, if you continue to able your boss's over-involvement, your manager will continue to meddle. You need to put down boundaries, although you do not necessarily need to make it obvious. For example, wait to respond to requests for non-urgent updates instead of replying immediately, or take back control of the conversation when your boss interrupts you mid-meeting. Avoid reinforcing negative behaviors and try to subtly train your boss to give you more space and credit. 6, demand dignity. Micromanagement can run the gamut from annoying to anxiety-inducing. Learn to recognize the difference between over-interference and abuse. There is a huge difference between your managers asking you to review your reports and your managers watching you on a video camera and calling you to let you know that you've made a mistake. Or for your managers asking you to track your time versus your managers timing your bathroom breaks. Realize also that your boss has no grounds to control your personal life, and beyond facet of basic professionalism should not try to interfere or control non-work aspects of your life. More extreme, micromanagement tactics are often indicative of toxic workplaces that require more than you speaking up to change. It usually betters to cut loose than to fight a battle you cannot win. Know your basic human and worker rights, and never compromise these rights just to keep the peace. Final thoughts. Most folks deal with this at least one micromanager over the course of their careers. These situations can be very stressful, especially since calling out a manager can be tricky. Colleagues in general can be sensitive about being confronted, and the power dynamic and hierarchy between the supervisors and reports can make these conversations even more fraught. However, there are techniques, both subtle and obvious, for dealing with micromanaging bosses that can prove to be effective. Many employees feel like they must ignore or deal with the micromanagement. However, over-supervision can take a toll over time. Autonomy is a necessary part of your job satisfaction and motivation and happiness. And employees have a right to feel accomplished, feel inspired instead of feeling nagged. Plus, overstepping the bosses can strain on a relationship and communicate a severe lack of trust. And chances are this mindset is not healthy for the manager either. It is better to confront these situations and have constructive conversations to try and inspire improvement. Sometimes a manager may not even be aware that he or she has micromanaging tendencies, or may just need the new perspective and impetus to change. And even if the micromanager proves uncooperative or unreceptive, then at least the employee can move on without regret. I hope that this has been insightful and valuable, so please do comment, like and share. So in my next upcoming video, I will be speaking about the other aspect of micromanaging, the psychological effects that micromanaging can have. Now, in the meantime, if you would like support around how to manage yourself positively, creating a more empowering mindset, then do get in touch with me. I'm Zinat Nurani, a mindset and well-being coach, and my mission is to help you create the life that you desire by helping you find and forge your path in life.